Welcome back. Here we are at Off the Shelf Book Talk with Book Lovers. I'm Elizabeth Nelson, here as always with Kay Johnson. And what have you been reading this time, Kay?
Well, I stumbled upon a new author, and I was very disappointed to find out that he only wrote 3 books, and then he died. Or he only wrote 3 of the mystery books that I like, and then he died. His name was James Anderson, and his books are written set in the 1930s in England. And they've got great titles. The Affair of the Blood-Stained Egg Cozy, The Affair of the Mutilated Mink, and The Affair of the 39 Cufflinks.
It's a lot of cufflinks.
Yes, it is.
But the big question is, what is an egg cozy?
I don't know. I have to read the darn book. I'm actually reading it right now, and what's really great about his books is you really get to know the characters. And he does a great job. They're all English weekend mysteries where people come to this...
A weekend in the country?
Yeah, and murder is a result. And the one I'm reading now starts out with, it's right before World War II. And so the English Foreign Office is attempting to cut some kind of deal with somebody. And so they meet at this country estate for the weekend. And of course, there's other characters that are all brought, and I assume someone's going to get murdered, and someone's going to get kidnapped, or something's going to get stolen, and we'll find out about this blood-stained egg cozy.
Maybe a whole mix of all of them. Somebody will get murdered and kidnapped, and they'll steal something.
Well, I read the second and third ones because they were free, and I had to buy the first one.
Oh, no.
Which, $5.99 too. Oh, I had to really think about it. But they really enticed me. They gave me a sample, and it was a good sample. It was like, I'm going to have to buy this to find out. But the books are great. They all feature the protagonist is Inspector Wilkins, and all 3 take place at the same country estate. And after the first set of murders, in the second book, the husband and wife promise they're not going to have any more weekend parties. And of course they do. And then for the third book, they really have promised they're not doing this anymore because they just have too many people dying on them.
Yeah.
But they're well done. My mother thinks they're crazy. She said there's a lot of crazy people in this book.
Those are the best books, though.
Yeah, I just think they're really well done, and I was just really disappointed to find out the guy died in 2007.
Well, darn it.
Yeah, that's just what I thought. I thought, God, there's got to be, when they do series, there's usually like 7, 8, 20, 30, 40, I mean, depending on who it is. And 3 seems just like so few. Yeah. So, but I'll report in what a egg cozy is next time.
I really like how you said they're just not going to do it anymore, because that really reminds me of the Hannah Swenson books by Joanne Flukes, where her mother is always commenting, Hannah, you have to stop finding these dead bodies. Yes. What are people going to think? And she's like, well, I'm not trying to, Mom. And then I think one of the times her mom says that in the very next book, then her mother's the one that finds the dead body.
Yeah, you have to really wonder about some of these towns.
You do, and it's always some tiny little town that nothing like this has ever happened before.
No,
and then
but there's just bodies everywhere. Right, left, up, down, in the closet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, following in the series, and we'll stick to, we're not in England for this one, but I finished the newest Maggie Holt book,
Ooh.
The Hollywood Spy. This is the 10th book in this series, and we've talked about Maggie on many, many episodes, but she is the British spy extraordinaire. And in this book, the newest one that just came out, she is back in sunny United States in California, helping to solve her ex-fiance's fiance's murder.
Wow.
And
That's
so
a mouthful.
yes, and so it's after, this one takes place after Pearl Harbor. So the
1942.
yes, so in around there, and so the U.S. is involved in the war, and boys are going off in it. The book actually opens right after the Zoot Suit riots have started
Okay.
in Los Angeles. So that's kind of the setting for the book. So you have her dealing with coming back to the United States and how everything is different, and then it also plays into the people she's going up against are involved in the Ku Klux Klan. So it's kind of the two driving forces in this book that go against it. And I was very excited when I got to the end and another book was set up for us. So there will be a continuation of the Maggie Hope books, even though this means more than likely it's going to be another. There's no title out for the next one yet, so it's probably going to be another year or two before the next one comes out. But I actually was kind of surprised that there were 10. I had to go back and count because they kind of, you run through them. So I've read through them all as they've come out, but I've kind of forgotten that there were that many of them. But
I recommend in the off season to go back and reread them because sometimes you forget how you got to this point.
Well, I mean, I can remember like what happened, but it's just I've kind of, I guess in my mind, maybe I've condensed them down a bit and maybe joined a few of the books together because they all flow really well. And I think that's what it is too, is that there's not a lot of downtime between each book. Like the last book, she was leaving to go to California, and then in this book, she's in California, and then in the next book, she's leaving to go off to where the next book is going to take place. So I mean, they all just kind of pick up right where the other one left off. So it's just a continuous story, which is really nice because then they're not doing a lot of backpedaling. And the other thing I like too is there are some book series like with Charlene Harris's Sookie Stackhouse books where the first like 4 chapters are just recapping everything that happened in every book previously to get you up to speed, which I never understood because it's like, I mean, that's great if it's for somebody jumping in the middle of the series.
I think it's always treated, they're sort of treated like standalones.
Yeah, but I mean, so like her books, the first 4 chapters are always, this is what happened in the 15 books before, 15 books beforehand. Whereas these, you know, they touch on like, if they'll be like, if they refer to like David is the name of a character that's Mr. Churchill's aide, and they'll always refer and they'll say, and they'll maybe mention 1 or 2 things to kind of refresh in your mind who he is. But it's not like, oh, David, who we met in the first book because he did this job and then he jumped over here and then this happened to him and he met this person, and they don't do that, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's kind of I like that continuation with these books, and I think
I like Maggie Hope almost better than I do Jacqueline Winspear's character, Maisie Dobbs.
I was just going to ask.
I love Maisie Dobbs, but you know, Maisie Dobbs' books are always sort of melancholy. You know, there's a lot of angst.
They're still on my to be read list.
You have to, those books you really need to read in order because they start when Maisie's like 13.
Okay.
And works as a maid in a man, you know, in a English estate, and how she becomes who she is, but as much as I like her books, I'm always sort of melancholy about them. You know, I'm never like, wow. I'm like, wow, with some new.
Well, I'm excited. It's a new book, not wow.
Yeah, and then it's always like, yeah, I read it, and you know, and there's angst too because we're now well into the beginning of World War II, and several of her friends, her partner Billy, and her best friend, they all have sons.
Okay.
And that one lost an arm at Dunkirk, one, you know, was a pilot, and so there's a lot of, you know, you just know something bad's going to happen.
Yeah.
But they're well done.
Yeah. Well, and how many Maisie Dobbs book? 10? Some? Yeah.
Well, at least 10, I think. There's a bunch. And then she did a couple of things like, oh, let me do my biography in the middle of this. Like, seriously, Jacqueline Winspear, I'm not that interested. You know, Maisie Dobbs. It's sort of like going to a Springsteen concert and have him up there talking, and you think, hey, I paid $120 for this seat. Sing, Bruce, sing. I don't want to hear you talk. And that's sort of how I feel about Jacqueline Winspear. Right, Jacqueline.
Well, and with Maggie, I like too that you can see her growing and like it seems like she's overcoming. And the one thing that was kind of funny with this book is she goes to a Caltech to meet with somebody who's going to run some kind of test she needs done. And he's a mathematician, and Maggie is a mathematician. She went to school to be a mathematician before she moved back to England, and that's and though it kind of always plays through. But he's leaving to go out. They're leaving to go out for lunch, and she's looking at the board at this problem he's working on, and she's like, "I'll be a minute." And she goes up to the board and erases stuff and changes numbers because his equation's wrong. And she just goes over and she goes, "This should be a 1." And then she looks at it and goes, "Yep, this is right." And she just leaves.
And did he?
I don't know if it solved anything, but I always think little quirks like that are interesting. How they bring that up in a character. So
that is fun.
Yeah.
That is fun. I just finished the 6th book in the Jason Redman and Daniel Hayes series.
Okay.
It's by an author named Irina Shapiro.
Okay.
And they take place in the late 19th century in England.
Okay.
And or actually right after the American Civil War, actually, because Jason Redman was at Andersonville prison for a year and almost died. And he and his ward go to England when his grandfather dies.
Okay.
He plans to settle the estate and then go back to the United States. But he ends up staying, marrying an English girl, and he's a doctor by training. And so the landed gentry doesn't actually work. So he can't practice medicine. So he instead works at the police department and does all their post-mortem. And so he kind of hooks up with Inspector Daniel Hayes, and they solve crimes. And so the last one I just finished was called Murder at Ardith Hall, and it's about a guy who dies at a seance. And it's good. And this is a 6th book. The 7th one's coming out in February.
Can they talk to him at the seance right away? Well, he dies at a seance. Can they just ask him what happened?
No, they never got to call anybody because this guy starts to cough, and then all of a sudden he starts.
That would be a really short book. You keel over dead. Who killed you?
Yeah, and then blood's everywhere. And there's an interesting twist though with this book right from the beginning, and they're interesting because the characters grow and you follow them, and it's one of those that's best read in order.
Okay.
But they're fine as standalones too if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would definitely say that.
Okay. Well, last night I finished a book by Colleen Oakley, and the name of this book, the title of this book alone just grabbed me, and I had to pick it up and read what it was about. The title of this book is The Invisible Husband of Frick Island.
Okay.
So Frick Island is this tiny little remote town in the Chesapeake Bay. There's 90 people that live on this island. There are no cars, there's no internet. There's a cell tower going up, which is driving people crazy because some people don't want this cell tower on the island. And so the book starts out with Piper as our main character, and Piper's husband is a waterman. So he goes out every day and goes crab hunt and fishes for crabs and to bring them back in. And he goes out one day during a storm and doesn't come back. And his boat has sunk, and he's nowhere to be found, and so he's passed away. The only problem with this is that Piper doesn't seem to realize her husband is dead. Okay. She continues to walk him to work every morning and has conversations with him.
And he's invisible,
and he goes,
correct?
And he's invisible. Nobody else can see him. But everybody else on the island continues to talk to Tom also because they don't want to hurt Piper's feelings by telling her that her husband is really dead. So everybody else on the island goes along with Piper.
All 90 people.
All 90 people on the island, from little Bobby, who's the only child on the island, all the way up to Bob Dan, who drives the ferry, continue to talk to Tom as though he's still alive. So that's the scene that this story is set on. And this is when Anders, who is a reporter, is sent to the island to cover their annual cakewalk. And he stumbles across this and decides he's going to figure out why she's doing this way, and he's going to do a podcast on it. But he doesn't tell anybody that's what he's doing it for. For him, he's coming to do a podcast on climate change and how it's affecting the island.
Okay.
So the whole story follows Anders trying to figure out what's going on with this town and how to help Piper. And there's actually more to the story than that, with some other things tied in with a few different twists. And I really liked it. I think it's just kind of one of those small town feel good stories. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, and I thought just it was a very interesting concept of having. I mean, like how, if you think about it, how would you approach that if you had someone who lost somebody and was so grief stricken, but they could still see them and carried on as though they were still alive? It kind of makes you think about, what would you do? And would you be the person that's like, oh my gosh, they're completely crazy and insane, we gotta snap them out of this? Or like, what happens when everybody decides to go along with it? It's sort of the same thing as with the movie Arsenic and Old Lace, where the brother thinks he's Teddy Roosevelt, and the sisters and the whole family just goes along with it. And it always makes me think of the line where they're like, have you ever thought of telling him he's not Teddy Roosevelt? And they're like, well, remember when we suggested that maybe he'd like to be George Washington, and he just hid under his bed and wouldn't be anybody.
Best to leave things alone.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, because it kind of makes you think like, yeah, you know, what would I do in that situation? So, but it was just a nice, and I thought it was interesting because it's a standalone book. So, I mean, that's just your one touch with all those characters. But a lot of the characters in town were really cute. Were just kind of funny, and it's a dry town. There's no alcohol, but then when he's looking through the window of a house, he sees a whole bunch of alcohol bottles. So he knows somebody's got there's secrets on the island, and just it's nice. It was a good read. So,
well, occasionally I trade up and go nonfiction.
You're coming my way now.
Yeah. And I finished a book by Michael Lewis, and for those who think the name sounds familiar, he wrote Moneyball.
Oh, yeah.
And The Blind Side, which both became popular movies. And the book I read recently was called The Premonition.
Okay.
And it's about a pandemic. And it's
timely.
It's a really interesting book because it starts back when George W. Bush was president, and he read a book on pandemics and then set up a whole department to create a pandemic plan for the United States.
Okay.
And this is true on the level. And so you're introduced to the people that were brought in to do this plan for George W. Bush.
Okay.
And then when Obama and Trump came in, Obama kind of dispersed the plan, sending different parts to different departments.
Okay.
And then Trump just 86'd it all together. And so when the COVID pandemic began, these people formed kind of an informal group.
Okay.
And they are now big time people, like head of like the VA system, or head of different global initiatives and things. And so they talk every Sunday night, and it's a true story how they're looking at and they're trying to advise and things. It was very interesting, and it makes you question some government practices. It makes you wonder about things, which I don't think is a bad thing. You know, it's always good to question versus just willingly accept and not challenge or think about it. And so I recommend, if you're looking for something interesting to read, Pandemic will give you food for thought by Michael Lewis. And he's a great writer and tackles interesting subjects.
Okay.
So I recommend that one. And then another nonfiction one, and I'm probably late to the party, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. There's nothing I love more than getting organized. And her book, as most people know, was a huge worldwide phenomenon. And I think I don't know if she still has a TV show, but she did it for a while. And basically her point of view is that you should love everything in your home. And if you don't love it, it should go.
Okay.
And I think there's something to be said for that. There's another guy named Joshua Becker who is a minimalist.
Okay.
And I watched some of his YouTube videos, and a couple things he says that I think are really interesting is to, instead of looking at your possessions as what can I get rid of, ask yourself, what do I need? And that kind of changes the whole dynamic, because all of a sudden you're not thinking, oh, I should get rid of that pink top. You're thinking, oh, I don't need that blue, red, or green one. I need the pink one because it matches the skirt, but I don't need the other one. And the other thing he said that's interesting, and he's written a number of books too, is that you should organize your home as if you're staging it to sell. Because what do? We live in our houses with the intention of changing things, but we don't do anything until we're going to sell it. And all of a sudden you're painting and moving and this and that. And he's saying you need to do that for yourself.
Okay.
And not for other people. And I think there's something to be said about that too, because we don't prioritize, ourselves.
Yeah.
We do it if we're going to sell, but we don't do it for our everyday living. And I think we should treat ourselves better and consider that.
Yeah.
So those are my advice for the day.
I know that when her TV show was out, she made some comment about you should only have it got misquoted.
Yes.
You should only have 30 books.
Yes.
And everybody, she said this, and then everybody in the book groups was like, does she mean on my bedside table or per room? Because there are some people that have huge amounts of personal libraries.
Oh, yeah.
Every time Tom tells me I have a lot of books that I haven't read yet, sometimes I pull up videos on TikTok of people's libraries, and I'm like, I have no books.
Yes.
Compared to these people. And then he doesn't complain so much.
At one point, I had books in my kitchen cupboards because I had no place to put them. And that was before the advent of Kindle. And so when Kindles came out and e-readers became available, I was able to get rid of, literally thousands of books.
Yeah.
Because, 90% of them I would probably never read again. It's just that I liked them for one reason or another. And unless you collect first editions, there's very few books you can't get anymore.
Yeah.
Either as an ebook or even a hardcover or paperback.
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel bad getting rid of them. And it isn't like I'm throwing them away. I'm moving them on to donate to the library.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did that during lockdown. Everything happened during lockdown. Now you have the after times, as people refer to them. I thought that was funny on a podcast. Somebody was talking about the things they did before times.
Yes.
That's how they've started referring to it. But I went through and was getting rid of books, and I got rid of quite a few, and my husband was like, are you okay? Because we moved all of these here to this house, and now you're getting rid of all of them. Have you lost your mind? You don't get rid of books. And it was the same kind of thing, sitting down and being like, yes, I have all of these books, but I haven't read them since high school. Am I keeping them because I will read them again? Or there are some books I've kept that I don't think I'll read again, but I need them for that sentimental value that we've talked about on other shows before. Like my first copy of Harry Potter is falling apart and can't be read, but it's going to sit on that bookshelf until they remove me from that house someday.
There's a wonderful book by Barbara Michaels called Amy Come Home. And I have it in e-version, paperback, and hardcover. And if you've never read it, I highly recommend it because it's a really great book. But and it could be almost a Halloween book because it's about a haunting.
I still need to read that book. I haven't read that one.
It's a wonderful book, and I used to always read it when I flew somewhere because it would relax me. I didn't really like to fly, and so I could get involved with this book and kind of shut off what was happening around me. But Amy Come Home by Barbara Michaels. Okay. It's a wonderful book. And then
I also on my bookshelf, I got them all from you. I have originals of the Jupiter Jones 3 Investigators books that were Alfred Hitchcock. So I mean, like, some of those, I think I read them back when I got them all, but I keep them too because
they're valuable.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get rid of them, so I don't care that they're valuable. I keep them because, most of them have your John Hancock in the front of them, your big loopy signature, so I know that they were yours. But I mean, it's the books that I keep because everybody else has read them.
They're great books.
Yeah.
Your boys will probably like them.
That's my new goal now is I have those and I want to try to find the ones I don't have. So those ones I want to collect. It's kind of figuring out what books I want to keep and have and what books I want to share with other people. But
I have I can't think who the author is, but there's 3 books I think, and they're kid books. It's about a brother, 2 brothers and a sister.
okay.
And the little brother is tired of his older siblings telling him what to do. And his dad's a vitamin salesman, and he's always gone. And the older siblings are supposed to be watching the little one, and their mother's dead. And the little one gets in the back of a comic book. It has, you can order this witchcraft kit, and he does. And he starts putting spells on everybody.
Oh gosh.
And they end up having this housekeeper, and I think he puts a spell on her, and he's doing everything he wants. And finally, Molly is the sister, and I think she figures out what he's up to. And they're great books. And again, it's their kids' books.
Yeah, well, we'll have to look up the title of that, and we'll bring that to you guys next time because we're out of time for this week. So reach out to us on Facebook or our email at offtheshelfbooktalk@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time.